We are about to settle the great debate in the sport fishing world. The question, Professor, is, should someone who's thinking about a big old sport fisher, should they go the express route or should they go the convertible route? That's the great debate. And the cool thing here is we've got two captains, two different boats. And in this video, we're going to finally decide which boat is the best for the high seas. So this is the first video we've ever shot on another boat, and it's one of the nicer ones, arguably the nicest, right, John? This is Captain John Bunn of the Blue Chip. He's one of the charter fishing boats here at Pirates Cove Marina, and he's got a very successful operation. He's one that we highly respect, and so he's been nice enough to allow us to have this conversation, use his boat. We want to show you now, we're going to start with the Flybridge. We're going to talk about the differences between the Flybridge that you see here and a traditional convertible style sport fisher. And then we're going to talk about the Express as well. After we're done with that, we're going to talk about the inside and how that differs from a salon to what would be the helm area. So let's start with you there, John, Captain John Bunn. If you had to say why the majority of captains choose a traditional convertible style, Flybridge style, what would you say the biggest advantages are?
I'd say visually, being able to see, the inlet, going out in the mornings, other boats, having people around you, being able to focus, getting through the inlet is definitely a big part of it, and just being able to see.
So that's one thing that you lose, Professor Wright. When you are in an Express, you're not elevated. You don't have that same vision like you would in terms of the fly. So what do you feel like, especially knowing the inlet and knowing the visual component of not just the inlet, but seeing fish as well on the horizon, right? Because we got the tower, but we don't have a place that you're gonna run out the inlet with, and you certainly don't want to be in the tower when it's, you know, wintertime. So what have you found to be the case as whether it's leaving the harbor, going through the inlet, looking for the fish? How do you feel about the fact an Express does not have that same visual component?
Yeah, well, I hardly ever run from the tower just because you're so exposed. You know, the wind, there's no block from it. And the electronics up there are nowhere near as compatible as electronics down on the bridge deck.
Wow.
So, but when I run from down there, I can't necessarily, I'm a lot closer to the water and I can't see a lot of the shoals and stuff like that. And here, you know, if you've got a certain wind direction, a shoal can build in a day while you're fishing, you know, or come out or extend or something like that. So that's one disadvantage that I have, not to mention, you know, the fish, being able to see the fish and the different changes and the water color and stuff like that from not being elevated and running it.
Yeah. So what other benefits, John, do you have when it comes to a Flybridge? What does this enable you to do? Because I know from what I've been told, of course, by Ron here, that you work the rods differently than you would in, say, an Express. So tell us about that.
So generally on a tuna fishing day, I'll have 4 rods, the teasers, he'll have 6, 7 downstairs. I've got my long riggers up here, so I'm able to fish my rods up here without him even touching the line. So it makes it a lot easier for me, I guess, throughout the day, not having to, hey, can you put this in the clip? Hey, can you put this in the clip? So the fishing aspect, I mean, I kind of in my own world up here.
Yeah.
And also, you can, like if you need to make an adjustment because of something you see in the spread, you can do it very quickly up here, you know what I mean? Instead of having to holler down, hey, I see a white one there on the right teaser or something like that, you know what I mean? So it's just, he can make adjustments up here, and he also has his teaser ribs up here.
To that, I'm guessing that he just sees the spread better,
Better.
from here. So whether it's grass or some other issues, when we talk about the visual component of being elevated in the Flybridge, that is, that's one of the big differences.
That's right.
That being said, I'm assuming there's some drawbacks of being in the Flybridge as a captain. Do you find that there's any drawbacks for yourself?
Yeah, you toss and turn and rock, and I mean you're rocking further this way and this way. So a lot of days I get done, my legs, like I can barely get down the ladder. They're like that.
So physically, it's harder on the captain of the boat.
It can be. I mean,
if on a rough day.
Yeah, the lower you are to the center of the boat, the calmer it's going to be. So some days, I mean, a lot of days, Southwesters, you're just sitting up here all day or like this, going into the tide. So.
And he's a lot more exposed to the elements up here.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no hiding, pretty much.
So once again, there's that issue of during the winter time, let's say if you're bluefin fishing, hypothetically, it would be harder, I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, to have this just as heated and it's not as quite as protected, so I'm guessing it'd be harder on you to bluefin fish during that time of the year.
Yeah, most definitely. You'd have to dress a lot warmer. If it's raining one day and the wind's trailing you, you know what I mean? You've got water blowing here in the captain's chair. It's a lot more exposed.
Yeah.
Where our boat, I can actually get inside and shut everything up and be warm, toasty, and dry.
Now, one other thing about the Flybridge, and I'm going to get your thoughts on this, and I'm sure you've probably felt this before, Captain, is there's arguments for being with your charter guests and arguments not being with your guests, right? And so, what's your take on that? And it's not just charters, right? It's friends too. So fishing with buddies, hypothetically, you might be by yourself up here unless they come up here with you because they would be in the salon. Whereas in an express, everything is a little bit more social.
That's right.
Because it's all happening. So let's analyze that for a second. Your thoughts on that, the social component of being essentially by yourself up here?
Yeah, I mean, you're not as involved. Like you don't have the distractions that you normally would have. Or I guess if there's more people, you're gonna have more distractions. And a lot of times, like I'm my own little world, so I need to focus and see and be able to see if there's birds. Look at my screen, look at my rods. Somebody's talking to you. A lot of times somebody will stand right there if you're fishing and they'll talk to you and he grabs hold of the teaser and you can't get to it. And I mean, it's it's a long ways down. You don't want anybody to fall. So
yeah.
Not only to that aspect, but in the morning going out of this inlet here, it don't matter how long you've been doing it, it's still nerve-wracking. You know what I mean? Every morning is nerve-wracking. And the thing that I find on our boat is you have, not that I mind it or anything, I love talking, I love people being around me, but you'll have, when you're concentrating and you're really at that moment where you need to concentrate, you'll have somebody talking to you or somebody sitting beside you with their brightness up on their phone and it's blinding you because they just don't know. You know what I mean? They have no idea that backlight is affecting your visibility to seeing exactly what you're doing.
So a lot better focus on the Flybridge, not so good social. So if you fish with the boys, or ladies, you might find that occasionally it's a little bit tougher because I know that just in terms of especially commercial fishing, it's nice that we're all kind of together in that helm area, whereas at the same time, there are the drawbacks. And we've said it before with the boat, every choice you make,
That's right.
there's going to be pros and cons.
Yeah.
In terms of the Flybridge itself, or just generally speaking, because we're going to get to the salon here in a second, Cap, but is there any other major benefits you think to having that convertible style boat for someone that's a serious sport fisherman?
No, I mean, I would say the Expresses, I fished on an Express for a while, and as far as for the social aspects, and if you're fishing with your friends, I would say that's a better option. Now, if you're fishing with charters or you're tournament fishing and you want to be able to see, or, I mean, the bar is big one day and you want to be able to see the breakers so you can time it, I mean, it's your better option for that.
Yeah. What about you, Professor? Any other thoughts just on this, on the the Flybridge component, the elevation, and because I know you've talked about before, just in terms of what would work for you.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that he is elevated here almost above the cockpit. So the problem I have a lot of times is when the fish gets straight up and down in the back, I have a hard time judging the depth off the side of the boat. Where here, you can see it a lot better. It's almost like you're right over top of it. You can tell if the line's getting close to the gunnel or something like that. And on our boat, I'm so far forward and down, it's hard.
So potentially as the captain, you could make more mistakes in that critical moment simply because you can't see it and you can only communicate so much.
And here, he does not have to look through people. He's above people looking down.
Yeah.
On our boat, I have to look through the people, and a lot of times people don't even think about it, but they're standing in the way of the line, so I can't see it, which direction it's going in.
Yeah. All right, this is great stuff. Let's go inside as well because there's some differences there that we need to take a look at. All right, so when you're looking at the difference between an express and a convertible style sport fishing boat, the salon area, as this would be known as, or in the express, I guess, Professor, we probably call it the helm area.
I call ours the bridge deck, but
okay,
I don't know if that's
all right,
correct.
Yeah, okay, all right. Because either way, we know some of you in the YouTubes are going to correct us anyway.
Right.
With that being said, let's talk about, again, the pros and the cons. Always the case. So, Captain Bun, what do you see as the big benefit and the disadvantage of having a salon this style versus the express style?
I would say a lot of times the air conditioner, people be able to come in, get out of the sun, sit inside in the air conditioner. That seems to be the biggest things, being able to go to the bathroom, not really having to go downstairs necessarily to get to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
That, in my experience, I mean, I know sometimes it's just nice to get out of that sun in July.
Right.
But more tackle, easier to store your tackle in and out from the day. If you need to grab something, you're not completely out of everything. He could be standing right here and you could see your flat line get bit.
Right. Do you see any disadvantages in your mind?
I
got a couple, but I'm curious to know your thoughts first.
mean, there's always disadvantages to everything.
I'll come back to you. I'm going to come back to you on that. See and get your thoughts on this, Professor. What do you see? Pros and cons. Anything that you'd add to what John said here?
He pretty much hit it all. I mean, I love the fact that all the rods are up, in the ceiling, and they're easily accessible. And you got a lot of tackle storage right here that's accessible. And the air conditioning is fantastic. And yes, people can get out of the elements, and be in a controlled environment. That's a great, attribute of this boat.
So here's my take on this, and that if there's the one Achilles heel I have, Professor, is I do occasionally get seasick on the rougher days.
Right.
What's interesting though is I do not almost ever get seasick during the summer on our boat.
Yeah.
But the reason for that is because we have incredible ventilation. And so with an express boat, you can essentially open it completely up to feel like you're getting the full effects of the breeze. And so if you do ever deal with any type of motion sickness, or if you just want the feeling of being more outside, you really, very much you get that in that express style boat. Pull up your curtains and you're good to go.
The only disadvantage to that is on some of the rough days, and that water's steady coming up and blowing back on the curtains, and we can't open them. So some days we can't. On the rougher days, we can't really, get that ventilation.
That's right. The other side of this too, if we think about it, now you can tell me if this is the case or not, Captain Bond, but if that door is closed, it's possible that you don't get the immediacy, like audio-wise, of the bite or what's happening. In other words, it's a little bit more separated from the salon to the outside in a convertible, whereas in an express style boat, you feel more like you're in the cockpit, even though you're in the helm area of the boat. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would definitely say you can find that some people, they'll come in here and just disengage from fishing, and they'll just, And I mean, the seasickness thing, I will say, a lot of times people sitting here and they rock the whole time, and by the time we set out, they're sick. Because they're just completely out of, they're not visually seeing the water, they're just like sitting in a living room in their house.
Right.
They go out there and all of a sudden
Their living room's rocking.
yeah.
And so because of that, they experience that seasickness. And so that's just a note for you. If you are ever going to go on a charter, you got to, just weighing these things out. We don't know, Professor, if we're always going to have an express boat. I mean, we've talked about, eventually we're going to upgrade probably and get something even bigger because ours is a little bit smaller. But I know me personally, I'm really going to miss that outside feel of the Express. I'll probably spend a whole lot of time up in the Flybridge so as to feel the air coming through.
But it's also a catch-22 because up there, the motion is intensified, because you're higher up off the water. So it's
all screwed up, isn't it?
Everything with a boat is a catch-22.
I've definitely had that happen on instance. Somebody come up there, up there for 10 minutes, they're sick.
Yeah. Up there for 10 minutes and they're sick, yeah.
Especially fishing because when you slow down and it's rocking so far.
So final question now, we're going to answer the real deal. Before I do that, pricing, would you say, is roughly, and I know it varies, there's less Expresses out there, especially when it comes to those Carolina-style boats. Pricing, if it's equal size of a boat, it's probably roughly the same price. Would you all say that's the case?
It all depends. I mean, but there's more finished space in a convertible style boat. So I think it drives the price up. You know what I mean?
The cost to finish the interior here is much greater in a convertible than in an Express. That's a really good point, Professor. Yeah, that's a good one. That's why he's Professor. All right, so let's finish this up, and hopefully you've enjoyed this, and hopefully by now you've subscribed because you're like, these people ain't so bad. I kind of like this education. That's what we do here at Saltwater Fishing University. And again, want to thank our good friend Captain John Bunn here on Blue Chip because he is just an amazing captain, and you should take a trip with him, especially if you want to be in the AC inside that salon, right? So with that being said, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Don't hesitate to be very honest here, okay? That is this. Number 1, as a charter captain, and I'm guessing we already have the answer to this, but as a charter captain, you have a choice between your nicest Express in the world or the nicest convertible in the world. Which one are you taking?
Convertible.
You're taking a convertible, and as someone that just loves to be out there in the ocean and catch the big ones, because that's obviously why you do what you do, John, right? You have all the money you want. If you're going to choose between a convertible or, once again, an Express, you're going to go with?
Convertible.
Going to go with a convertible. And if you had to say one fundamental reason why, like one sentence, you're only allowed one sentence, why you'd go with a convertible as someone that loves to be out there offshore, what would you say that is?
Fishability.
Fishability.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a word.
Professor, you got all the money in the world. All right. You got to choose between a convertible and Express for your crew. And in this case, we're talking about for a charter crew during the summertime. You're taking what?
Well, see, I've had a lot of ideas going through my brain about making the perfect boat. So, in my ideal world, there would be a boat designed where you could also drive from down here and be out of the elements and have a Flybridge up top, just like this one that you could fish rods from.
Yeah, that would be
if
nice.
If I were to build a boat and I had all the money in the world, that's the way I would build it.
You want a hybrid.
That's right.
Well, maybe that's a preview of what's going to happen. We just got to get a few more views on the channel. So we need y'all's help here because Professor needs a hybrid. But hopefully you now have a good sense as to the differences, pros and cons of a convertible sport fisher versus an Express style. And make sure you come join us in North Carolina. We're right here at Pipes Cove Marina in Manio. He's Blue Chip Captain John Bunn. We love him. We call him all the time for the intel, and he's nice enough to actually help us out, and occasionally we're able to help him too, which is good. He's the Professor. You're awesome. And until the next time, everyone, stay salty.